Let me show you how to solve quadratic equations with factoring. Solving x squared equals 16. The regular way is simple. Just ask yourself what numbers squared are 16. The numbers are 4 and negative 4. 4 squared is 16 and negative 4 squared is also 16. If you want to form a rule, you can take the square root on both sides of the equation. So the square root of x squared is x. And on the right hand side we get the plus minus square root of 16, which is 4 and negative 4. But how can we solve this equation with factoring? We just have to subtract 16 on each side to get x squared minus 16 equals 0. This is exactly the same form as in the third binomial formula, which is a plus b in parentheses times a minus b in parentheses equals a squared minus b squared. A squared minus b squared is exactly what we have here in our problem. So we can factor our problem to x plus 4 in parentheses times x minus 4 in parentheses. Now ask yourself, what number do we have to plug in for x to get a true equation? Also known as an equation where it equals 0 when multiplying these two parentheses. The zero product property says that when at least one of the parentheses is 0, the solution is 0. The first set of parentheses equals 0 when x is negative 4. And the second set of parentheses equals 0 when x is 4. Let me plug in the negative 4 to show that. Negative 4 plus 4 is 0. No matter what we have in the second parenthesis, the zero product property says 0 times something is 0. And when we plug 4 into the second set of parentheses, we have 4 minus 4 equals 0. So no matter what we have in the first set of parentheses, the first parenthesis times 0 is also 0. So negative 4 and 4 are the solutions for this problem, and we solved this problem with factoring. Let's look at the next example. 2x squared equals 50. After dividing by 2, and subtracting 25 on each side, we get x squared minus 25 equals 0. The third binomial formula says that we can write this as x plus 5 in parentheses times x minus 5 in parentheses. We see that when x is negative 5, or 5, the equation is true. If you are having trouble seeing that, you can also ask yourself the question, when does x plus 5 equal 0? And write that as an equation. After subtracting 5 on both sides, you see that x equals negative 5. You can do the same with the other parentheses. X minus 5 equals 0. Adding 5 on both sides, and we get x equals 5. So when you have a quadratic equation in the form of something times x squared and a separate number, and both are perfect squares, you can apply the third binomial formula and rewrite the problem as factors. And then, by applying the zero product property, you will find the solutions for the problem. What about this example? 10x squared plus 2x equals 0. In this example, we can use the common factor method. Just factor out the 2x, and we get 2x times 5x plus 1 in parentheses equals 0. The equation is true when x is 0, because 2 times 0 is 0, and 0 times something is 0. The equation is also 0 when the expression in the parentheses is 0. We also call this the zero product property. In other words, multiplying 0 with something is always 0. So when is 5x plus 1, 0? After subtracting 1 on both sides, we get 5x equals negative 1. And after dividing by 5 on both sides, we get x equals negative 1 over 5. So the solutions are 0 and negative 1 over 5. Which we found out with factoring. Let's look at x squared plus 3x plus 2 equals 0. When you have an example like this with 1 as the coefficient of x squared, something with x, and a constant term, you can try Vieta's formula method to factorize. This is important now. Ask yourself, which two numbers, when multiplied, give us the constant term 2? And the same two numbers, when added, gives us the opposite of 3, which is negative 3. Feel free to pause the video and try it yourself. The numbers are negative 1 and negative 2. Negative 1 times negative 2 is 2, which is the constant term. And negative 1 plus negative 2 is negative 3, which is the opposite of the coefficient of the x. So we can write x plus 1 in parentheses times x plus 2 in parentheses. The equation is 0 when x is negative 1 or when x is negative 2. Because negative 1 plus 1 is 0 and 0 times something is 0. The equation is also 0 when x is negative 2, because negative 2 plus 2 is 0 and something times 0 is 0. So our solutions for this problem are negative 1 and negative 2. Let's look at x squared plus 12x plus 35 equals 0. Again, ask yourself, which two numbers multiplied together equal 35? And which of the same numbers added together? Are the opposite of 12, which is negative 12. Feel free to pause the video and try that on your own. Negative 5 times negative 7 is 35, and negative 5 plus minus 7 is minus 12. So we can write x plus 5 in parentheses times x plus 7 in parentheses. And again, this equation is 0 when x is negative 5 or when x is negative 7. Which are the solutions for this problem? What about this example? X squared minus 5x plus 6 equals 0. Which two numbers multiplied together equal 6? And which of those same numbers added together equal 5? Feel free to pause the video and find out. 2 times 3 is 6, and 2 plus 3 is 5. Which is the opposite of negative 5. So the solutions for this problem are 2 and 3. So we can write x minus 2 in parentheses times x minus 3 in parentheses. Let's look at an example where we can't do Vieta's formula method because we have a coefficient in front of x squared, like in 4x squared plus 8x plus 3 equals 0. By the way, we call this polynomial a trinomial because we have 3 terms. We see that we can't simplify this because we can't factor a greatest common factor out. In this case, we can try the AC method. Before we start, we have to write the quadratic formula in this form, like it is here in our example. So something with x squared plus something with x and a constant term equals 0. If your problem is not in this form, you have to simplify the problem until it gets to this form first. We call the coefficient of x squared, which is 4a, the coefficient of the x, b, and the constant term, c. This is important now. For the AC method, we have to first multiply a by c. So in our example, 4 by 3. Which equals 12. The second step is to write the 12 with two factors. So we have 1 times 12, or 2 times 6, or 3 times 4. Now, the third step is to ask how can we write the b, which is 8 in our example, as a sum of one pair of these factors. The answer is 2 and 6. Because 2 plus 6 equals 8. Now we can rewrite the 8x as 2x plus 6x. And now we can factor by grouping. So let's write the first two terms and the last two terms in parentheses, because we can change the order of numbers being added together. By the way, we call this the associative property of addition. Now ask yourself, what do these two terms in the first parentheses have in common? In other words, we're going to factor out their greatest common factors. We see immediately that 2x is in 4x and in 2x. When I divide these two terms by 2x, we get 2x plus 1. What about the next two terms? What do these two terms in the second parenthesis have in common? The 3. So we can write 3 times 2x plus 1 in parentheses. So the whole purpose of factoring by grouping is to get two expressions that are exactly the same. And since they are exactly the same, I can factor them out. And what's going to left over is 2x plus 3. So I write that as my other factor. Now we have the same situation as in our previous examples. What do we have to plug in for x to become a true equation? Let's first look at the first set of parentheses and make that equal to 0. 2x plus 1 equals 0. Subtracting 1 on each side gives us 2x equals negative 1. And dividing by 2 on both sides, we get x equals negative 1 over 2. What do we have to plug in for x in the second set of parentheses. 2x plus 3 equals 0. After subtracting 3 on both sides, we get 2x equals negative 3. And after dividing by 2 on both sides, we get x equals negative 3 over 2. So our solutions for this problem are negative 1 over 2 and negative 3 over 2, which we found out by factoring with the AC method. Let's look at 9x squared plus 9x minus 4 equals 0. Again, the first step is to multiply a by c, which is 9 by negative 4, which is negative 36. The second step is to write the negative 36 with two factors, so that these two factors, when added together, equal b, which is 9. So we can write negative 36 as 1 times negative 36, or as 2 times negative 18, or as 3 times negative 12. We can also flip the signs, so negative 36 is also negative 3 times 12. And 12 minus 3 is 9. So now we can write the 9x as 12x minus 3x. The next step is to factor by grouping. So let's write the first two terms and the last two terms in parentheses. The greatest common factor of the expression in the first set of parentheses is 3x. So we can write 3x times 3x plus 4 in parentheses. And the greatest common factor of the expression in the second parentheses is negative 1. So we can write negative 1 times 3x plus 4. So when we can't factor out, then factor out the 1. Now we can factor out 3x plus 4. And what's going to be left over is 3x minus 1. When thus 3x plus 4 equals 0. Feel free to pause the video and try that on your own. After subtracting 4 on both sides, we get 3x equals negative 4. And after dividing by 3 on both sides, we get x equals negative 4 over 3. And for the other expression, we get, after adding 1 on both sides, 3x equals 1. And after dividing by 3 on each side, we get x equals 1 over 3. Let's look at 4x squared minus 14x plus 12 equals 0. We see in this example that we can divide the whole quadratic formula by 2, which makes the problem easier without changing the solution for the problem. So after dividing the whole equation by 2, we get 2x squared minus 7x plus 6 equals 0. Feel free to pause the video and try this example on your own. A times c, which is 2 times 6, is 12. And we can write the 12 as 1 times 12 or 2 times 6 or 3 times 4. We can write the negative 7 as negative 3 plus negative 4. And after factoring by grouping, we get x times 2x minus 3 minus 2 times 2x minus 3. Now after factoring out 2x minus 3, x minus 2 is left over. 2x minus 3 is 0 when x equals 3 over 2, and x minus 2 is 0 when x is equal to 2. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comments. This video is what I did for you. If you want to do something for me, hit the bell button, share and subscribe. Thanks for watching and happy learning, everyone.